Hey everybody, welcome back to Horror Trans. My name is Stephanie Bree. I'm a transgender woman and I talk about all things horror. And today, for our horror first up review, is the original Universal Dracula film from, I believe, 1931, somewhere in that area. Basically, one of the first feature-length horror movies released in the U.S. by a Hollywood studio. This is where it all started. So, I know I did a video previously saying I wasn't going to do the Universal Monster movies, but I decided to go ahead and watch them anyways. My original reasoning for that was twofold. One, they're old, and they're very, well, let's just say prolific and well-known, and everybody's talked about them to death. And I don't really feel like I've got the, experience with them to be able to add anything new to the discussion. And they're old. I'm not really into old movies. I like some old movies, don't get me wrong. I studied film in college. And as a horror fan, I do respect the place these movies have in the history and pantheon of horror. And, how they paved the way for basically everything we have today. So you have to give them their props for that. But I still want to critique them as films, like on their own. And that's hard for me to do because these are old black and white movies set in an era before they added music to films. Back when Hollywood was still, in its infancy, basically. These were one of the earliest talking pictures, one of the earliest films that had sound. So they were still in the experimental phase. Hollywood didn't know what the hell it was doing yet. Some refer to it as the Golden Age or the Golden Era. I don't prefer that term at all because it always implies some mythical, other time where everything was great. And we all know the 1930s was not a great time in America, so let's not, sugarcoat it and act like it was. But let's just set all that aside for a second and just talk about the movie, Dracula. The one starring Bela Lugosi, famously as Count Dracula. I've never read the book, so I cannot comment on how faithful it is to the book. I mean, it's like Frankenstein. Even without having seen the movie, you've seen the movie. You've seen the iconic images in YouTube videos and documentaries and, VH1 specials and etc. It's been parodied to death and referenced to death. So like I said, it's really hard for me to come up with something fresh or new or original to take, to talk about. But I decided I'd go ahead and give my thoughts anyways, because I know, that's what people want, and you're curious, I'm sure. What did I think of this film? Unlike Frankenstein, which I actually enjoyed, even though I found fault in it and had stuff to discuss, I can't really talk about Dracula that much because I didn't enjoy it. I was bored out of my skull, and it's only like a 68-minute movie. It's hella short. It might be a little longer than that, but it is. It's like over before it begins. I was surprised at how short it was when I watched it. So like I said, I can't really talk about how faithful it is to the book. All I have to compare it to is the 1992 Bram Stoker's Dracula, which I've already reviewed. And I had issues with it as well, but overall enjoyed it. And I think I gave that one a buy. I'm pretty sure I did. I think that was the rating I gave it. Spoilers if you haven't seen that video. Oops. Anyways. But you can still watch the video to get my thoughts on it, because I had some nitpicks about it as well. So I'll start with the pros. Obviously, it's a classic. Bela Lugosi is the template for how you do a vampire. Every vampire who has come after him has borrowed something from him, paid homage to him, or ripped him off in one way or another. He's basically like, Vampire 101. That's this movie. The acting is over the top, which is fine, not just for the time, but it's fine for a horror movie, a B movie. I'm okay with that. The story is well written. It's well developed. The characters are some are more interesting than others. So it's pretty standard horror movie, When you look at it from that lens, just critiquing it as a movie, if you take away the historical context, there's really nothing special about this movie. It hadn't been the first vampire movie, and it really isn't, technically. Nosferatu predated it, but that's a whole other story for another day. But Nosferatu was not an American film, so this was Hollywood's first stab, I believe, at a, feature-length proper horror film. And where you could argue whether or not Frankenstein is even horror, technically. I mean, it's by today's standards, probably not. Probably more science fiction comedy than horror. Dracula is still a horror movie. And it has some adult themes in it, even though they're not fully explored as they would be in later films. Again, because of the time it was made, which is why it's like you have to look at it within the historical context, and that makes it hard to separate that from the historical context to talk about the movie. It's a great looking movie, beautiful, gothic, fantastic shots and cinematography and set dressing and locations and everything else. Looks good. And I know it's a minor nitpick, especially considering I'm looking at it from a modern lens, but there's no music in this movie, and it's like you're expecting violins or pianos or something, and it's not there. And I know that's going to be a turnoff for some people. It's a short movie, but it's still a slog, because it's it doesn't feel like a movie for some reason. I'm watching it and I don't want to say it feels like student film, because it doesn't. It is well made. I just don't really know how to describe it. Which, again, is one of the reasons why I really didn't want to talk about these movies. But I don't hate it. I want to put that out there. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I appreciate it for what it did, again. And I respect what it was trying to do at the time. And it's a good-looking film. I'll give it credit for that. It's just, I guess I had the, we'll say, misfortune in this regard, at least in relation to this movie, of having seen the vastly superior Bram Stoker take by Francis Ford Coppola, the Francis Ford Coppola film from 1992. Star-studded cast, minus one cardboard cutout named Keanu Reeves, who was miscast, but whatever. We've already beat that horse to death. This movie, not so much. And it's partially because I've already got this other film in my head as a reference point for how a Dracula movie should be done. Fucking 70 years later or something like that. Which is unfair to this film. I have to agree to that, admit to that. If I go based on just my own gut instinct, just my own, impression of the film, I would rate this as a Rent. I'd be like, if you need to see it for the historical context, watch it, get it out of the way, move on. But because it is a tremendously mega, ultra iconic film, I can't stress enough how, pervasive this movie is in horror culture. I would have to at least recommend it as a buy if you're interested in the Universal monster movies. In my opinion, it's not as well rounded as the Frankenstein film from just a couple years later, but it's a good solid first attempt, at horror. And if you want to put a modern lens on it, a good first entry in what would become a multi IP shared universe franchise, if you will. Rock solid first entry. I do own one of the countless Universal Monster Movies box sets, so I have the entire collection on DVD anyways. So it would be kind of hypocritical for me to tell you not to buy it as well. But I bought the box set because I wanted to watch these movies, to enjoy them and explore them from the historical context, but also because I'm a horror nut, and I think it's cool to see where we come from, It's our roots, So the basic plot is the same plot as every Dracula movie. Crazy guy goes to the castle, gets infested by the Dracula's, I'm going to say slave women or wives or whatever. He goes on a leaky boat, to England to investigate a piece of property. He, will say sexually assaults a woman, vampires her, and then as a result of that, a posse is formed. They hunt him down. They kill him. The end. That's the movie. It's the same plot points, beat for beat, as every other Dracula movie, I would assume, or at least the ones I have seen. Which I've only seen this. I've only seen this one, the '92 one, and like Dracula 2000, and a couple of spoofs. It's you already know this movie. Like I said, if you've seen any countless references of it or imitators of it, you've seen this movie. If you're looking for a classic horror movie in that old Hollywood Gothic template, you're going to enjoy this movie. If you want a bloody, modern, sexy take on the Dracula tale that has all the naughty bits that this movie leaves out, watch the Bram Stoker's one. Or any other one. I haven't seen the Hammer films, but I'm hesitant to watch those mostly just because there's just so goddamn many of them. There's like 30-something Hammer films, and I'm like, oh my god. I can't even get through the Hellraiser franchise. So that's my discussion of the original Universal Dracula with Bela Lugosi. You should watch it, I would say, absolutely, but I don't know if I would go so far as to say you need to own it, but it's readily available should you go that route. Stay cool.